I think my thoughts really are about the differences between us working in the West, or globally, if you like, and India. And I think that there's a real difference in a perception of time, maybe that's what it is. And there's a continuum that seems to be in your work, in the culture of India that we lack. We are far too quick to put up boundaries between what's traditional, what's vernacular, and what's new and what's contemporary. The tradition that we have created in Snøhetta of transformation. We think that design is a transformational tool. It's a tool where we can leave the world in a little bit of a better place. We should use design as being transformational.
I think the other aspect is how do you integrate them into our contemporary world? And that's the fun part. And I think architecture is that collaboration. As we always say, it's never a solo sport. So when they talk about star architects, we get confused. But it's such a team sport. And I think the greatest projects are these wonderful collaborations. And our design philosophy is very deeply rooted in an Indian vernacular architecture and vocabulary. Whether it is how we use water in our projects as a nucleus or a connector, or to generate microclimates depending on where we're building.
Hello everyone, my name is Pooja Tiwari and I'm very delighted to welcome all of you to episode 6 of VC Live Season 3. For those of you joining us for the first time, VC Live is brought to you by the Godrej Value Co-Creators Club, an initiative by Godrej Locks and Architectural Solutions. Before we dive in, let me introduce GVCC, a thriving community built to support architects and interior designers. With over 2,000 plus members and growing, GVCC fosters knowledge-sharing collaborations and design excellence. If you haven't signed up yet, check out the link in the chat to be a part of this dynamic network. One of our key initiatives is VC Live, a platform where global experts share their knowledge, insights, and perspectives on architecture and design. We recently hosted the second GVCC Cricket Championship 2025, bringing together 20 leading architectural and interior design firms from Mumbai. AHC Smashers, which is architect Hafiz Contractor Mumbai, emerged victorious with Mr. Fazal awarded Man of the Series. Edifice Cricket Club, Edifice Consultants Private Limited, secured the second runner-up position. The event showcased industry unity, teamwork, and cricketing talent, reinforcing Godrej's mission of fostering industry-wide engagement. This month, we partnered with the Indian Institute of Interior Designers to conduct a faculty development program with the primary objective of raising the standards of interior design education and fostering continuous improvement in the field. This program was designed for all faculty members involved in teaching interior design, architecture, or related design disciplines. By enhancing the knowledge, skills, and teaching methodologies of educators, we aim to contribute to the overall quality and advancement of design education. Let's take a quick look at what GVCC is all about.
Welcome to the Godrej Value Co-Creators Club, where innovation meets collaboration. GVCC is a unique platform for architects and interior designers to merge their creative visions with our innovative product offerings. We aim to cultivate a network of thought leaders driving innovation and excellence in the industry. Celebrate your achievements with our GV's Awards, recognizing innovative projects across various verticals. Join our community through exhibition visits and masterclasses to stay updated on the latest trends and technologies. Enjoy exclusive access to new products, special discounts, and tours of our Mumbai and Goa plants. Join the Godrej Value Co-Creators Club today. Be part of a community that values innovation, collaboration, and sustainability.
All right, with such a refreshing start, it's time for VC Live, a monthly thought leadership series featuring some of the biggest names in architecture and design. Over the past seasons, we have explored conscious design, smart living, and material innovation. This season, we are exploring Future Forward, a theme that challenges conventional design thinking, embraces innovation, and reimagines the built environment for a more sustainable, inclusive, and technologically advanced future. Today's episode, which is Architecture, Tradition through Transformation, explores how architecture can bridge heritage, sustainability, and innovation. We have two brilliant minds with us joining us today who are reshaping the future of architecture across continents. At the end of their presentations, we'll also have a Q&A session, so please drop your questions in the Q&A tab where we can go along. All right, let's begin and deep dive into architecture, tradition to transformation. Our first speaker is architect Robert Greenwood, partner and director for Asia Pacific at Snøhetta. He's an architect who has played a pivotal role in some of the world's most iconic public spaces, from the Alexandria Library in Egypt to the Shanghai Opera House and the King Abdul Aziz Center for World Culture in Saudi Arabia. A champion of collaborative transdisciplinary design, Robert pushes the boundaries of architecture to create sustainable, inclusive, and transformative spaces. His work spans continents, blending nature, technology, and human experience to redefine how we live and interact with the built environment. Let's give a warm welcome to architect Robert Greenwood. We are very eager to hear your thoughts on how architecture can transform and inspire. A warm welcome. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today with you all. Particularly, thank you to Nandini, who I'm going to be sharing this session with. It's a real honor and pleasure to be on the same screen as you, at least. So look, I'll start by sharing my screen and hope that you all can see and hear well. So I'm talking to you, of course, from Snohetta. That's the name of our office. That's where I am here in Norway. That's where this mountain is. It's called Snøhetta. I'm not talking to you from the mountain, although sometimes it does feel that cold over here in Norway. But, you know, what we say about Snøhetta is a place that nobody is from, but anyone can experience. And I think that really sums up a little bit of the mantra that we have towards not just our projects, but also our way of working, that it's open and porous and generous for everybody to be a part of and everybody to experience. This is Snøhetta. This is the people who are Snøhetta. This is our staff as we visited the mountain just a few months ago when it was a little bit sunnier and a little bit warmer. But this concept that we have of working as architects is one of working as a collective. And I think that this really forms our view of the world and it forms our view of how we want to work and how we want our projects to transform the world. We start with the title, which I think is a great one, Tradition to Transformation. And I'm very interested to hear what Nandini has to say, because I think we come from different places and have a different take on tradition and transformation. And I think from us here in the West, there's an awful lot to learn. But I'm turning it around a little bit and saying, I'm going to talk about the tradition of transformation, because I think that is the tradition that we have created in Snøhetta of transformation. We think that design is a transformational tool. It's a tool where we can leave the world in a little bit of a better place. We should use design as being transformational. And it can transform not just our environment, but also our societies. We've been spending a number of years now, a decade, talking about sustainable design, sustainable architecture. But we want to really talk about regenerative architecture and make architecture actively restoring and enhancing our environments and society. I'm going to start with social regeneration and really show you some of the projects where our work has, I think, started to transform the cultural and social environment that it's in. We'll start in Oslo. It's on the back door of our office. And what we'd like to say about this project is it's embracing our right to roam freely. You know, in Norway, we have a right to walk anywhere along the coastline. Nobody can put up barriers to stop us from walking. So in the design for the opera, we're really embracing that age-old right to be able to roam freely and walk wherever we want. And people walk all over this project. These young girls have found their little space in the entrance. They're walking all the way up there where they can't be found. These boys are sliding down the slippery marble walls, and this young girl is exploring and experiencing architecture with all her senses. It really has changed, I think, people's perception of what a performing arts center can be, what an opera house can be, and how that can work in the environment, in the city that it's said. These people, are they on the inside looking out, or are they on the outside looking in? Is it a performance, or are they really the performance? And there's always people here on this roof. Some of them might go and buy a ticket and go and see the opera. Other people really just want to come here and experience the opera. It doesn't really matter. You talk to the people here. Well, he comes twice a week and he's never even been to the opera. And that's a wonderful thing. He's really coming here. He wouldn't afford a ticket.
First of all, to feel free, and
he comes here to feel free. And it really is a freedom here. You can walk where you want. There are no signs saying, go this way, go that way, queue here, or whatever.
I think the building is one of the best buildings because I like the...
She likes the white color. And why does she like the white color of the building? Because it really is the people themselves who come, who bring the color to the building. It's the people who actually inactivate and enliven architecture. Indeed, without people, there would be no architecture. Come alone, you come together, you come to the summit, a few people, many people, but there's no program. There's no things to buy. It's just a piece of nature, urban nature. And it's been embraced by the people of Oslo because it really transforms the idea of the opera to being something that's democratic, something that's open for everybody and not an elitist institution. Yes, you can still buy a ticket and go inside. You can see the artwork, which is pay white with a stage curtain. But the real deal, the real show is on the outside where everyone can go to feed the swans, fish your dinner, go skiing in the winter or swimming in the summer. It's open for everyone. It's generous. It's porous. It's changing what the institution of the opera is. It's changing culture and society in Norway. We're trying to do the same, I think, now in Shanghai. This is still under construction. It's the Shanghai Grand Opera House, and it's really a place to see and a place to be seen. It starts, of course, with opera movement in space and time, and the whole building is generated around this idea of movement, creating a public space. The opening of the fan creates this surface for the people, for the public, but also a volume for the venues below. Instead, in the big park, the fan opens up to the river. This is our very first model, but you can see already now how this becomes a public space set in the heart of Shanghai. This is really transforming, I think, the way Chinese society is thinking about architecture. We're going from 2 decades of building quantity and numbers to building quality and culture. You can see all the landmarks around. Our landmark, the opera, is small, but it's horizontal and it's occupying this space, giving the views across the river underneath this big canopy of the fan. This is underneath, looking up, of course, and then as you move to the top, you get these views out over the Shanghai skyline. It's really built on a completely different scale to anything we've done before. It's bigger than anything else. The top of the fan, and then clearly this is going to be an Instagram moment for your handheld phone, but also if you bring a drone, it's going to be over the whole media. It's going to be a public space in Shanghai for all of the people, all of the citizens. It's going to be open to everybody. I think if we look at what's transformative for societies, we have to go back to probably one of our first buildings, the Alexandria Library in Egypt, which really has become a beacon in what has become very changing times in Egypt. The city which we built this library in 20 years ago has changed, and not all those changes have been for the better. But the library itself has become this one fixed environment for the people of Alexandria. It's a place that is stable. It creates a community around itself, and the people who go there are really proud of that community. It opens to the sea, of course. It is this big library space. It's one of these big libraries that's bigger than itself. It isn't like going inside a library. It's like going out into a library, out into a forest, and you can look in the far distance as you read your book. It's a bigger experience than just a library. But it really has become this beacon and this landmark for a society that's been in deep change over the last 20 years since we finished the building human barriers, human fences to keep the looters and the rioters out of the library during the Cultural Revolution. But it now remains a place where people come to celebrate the good times and not just the bad times. A place to see and be seen. They bring that color here too. And the space is this big forest of columns with the light that filters down through it. It's always busy. There's always people here. Young people, old people, women, men. It's never a free seat to be found. Really quite fantastic in a city that is quite struggling in the modern context of the world. Staying on the theme of libraries, I'm going to show you our next library that's just opened actually in Beijing. It opened just 1 year ago. And this really is under the title Bigger Than Itself. It is a open library, just like the one in Alexandria. You know, before we finished this one in Beijing, the library in Alexandria was the biggest library reading room in the world. Beijing has actually taken that from Alexandria and has a little plaque from the Guinness Book of Records that says it is now the biggest library reading room in the world. And it's this one big open landscape. The whole library is transformed into a three-dimensional landscape. You find the place where you want to sit and work. The books are arranged in shelves and stacks and terraces as you move up the valley side. It's a built, man-made landscape. But what a great place to come and study. What a great place to come and read. You can really connect the mind's eye view as you read your book into something physical and looking out across a much bigger landscape. There's something about its size in itself that really makes it very open and very generous for people of all types to come and spend their time, read and contemplate. Of course, we also need to regenerate and transform our environment. So environmental regeneration is another big theme. We've spent a number of years trying to build carbon neutral buildings with a zero carbon footprint. This building, we call it a powerhouse building. It's one of a series of buildings we've built up in Scandinavia. They're all creating more energy than they use. This one creates 200% more energy than it uses. That means that in the lifetime of the building, it can offset all the carbon that we use to construct the building, all the carbon that we use to dismantle the building after it's not used anymore, and it becomes in its lifetime a carbon neutral project. It's in the city of Trondheim, up in the north of Norway. There isn't a lot of sunlight. What sunlight there is, we capture We bring that together with geothermal energy, and we create twice as much energy as the building needs. That means that the buildings around can be heated or cooled from this building. The buses in the local city bus transport system recharged from the electricity the building creates. It is quite possible. We're now building a series of these out across Scandinavia and down into Europe. In Japan, we haven't come that far in Asia where we actually have done carbon neutral buildings, but we can do steps along the way. And just the solar shading, the passive solar shading that the facade creates on this tower that we're building in Shibuya in Tokyo, it's for the Tokyo Corporation. It's a mixed-use building, but it reduces the solar heat gain just through the horizontal lamellas by 22%. It's a landmark in the city of Tokyo. It's also an urban sanctuary in the heart of Shibuya, a place that has very few gardens and trees, bringing the gardens and trees into the project itself. In Bangkok, we're about to complete this project in the city center. It's south of the city center. We call it Cloud. It's being called Cloud 11 by the developers. It's a big mixed-use development. And when we started the project together with the developers, we went out to the residents and the communities around to talk and ask, well, just what is it you want from this development? What can we give back to the city? And everybody said more green space. Bangkok is one of the most polluted cities in the world, and it has very, very few green spaces, just 7 square meters per resident. Most Asian cities are around 39. So creating a new urban lung, many pocket parks, but also a project where we can actually clean the air and make a micro climate within the city of Bangkok. 30 years ago, Bangkok used to look like this. Now it looks like this. We really need these new green spaces. So this big floating courtyard with this big open public park on top becomes this urban lung in the city center. This is under construction, so we haven't put in the landscape yet, but this will be the green park in the middle. In Cannes, our landscape architects are redeveloping the Croisette. That's the avenue that runs around the Corniche, that runs around the bay in Cannes. And there we're really talking about tree planting, keeping the trees that are there and adding as many new trees as we can to increase the offset of carbon. So this is the Croisette in Cannes, stretching across its whole beachfront, where we're now planting a whole range of new trees to complement the trees that are there before. This makes a difference. In Europe, we do build a lot in timber. We don't think this necessarily is the solution all the way around the world, but certainly in many parts of Europe, it is. And we can really reduce the amount of carbon embodied in our projects. And likewise, our master plan for Budapest is all about storm water prevention, looking after the blue-green infrastructure, making sure that the development can stand against the 200-year storm event. Even down to our product design, we want to prolong the lifespan of the products. This is a furniture line where we can prolong the lifetime by looking at being demountable rather than just being one fit. And even in our website design, if you go onto our website, you can use it on a low energy rating, so you get an A+ rating. This is a high-rise project we've done in Oslo in Norway. It's called Vertical Nydalen. In a Norwegian context, this is high-rise. It may not look it to you in India, but it's a triple zero project. So we're using zero energy for cooling, heating, or ventilation. So all the cooling and the heating is done through geothermal and photovoltaics, and the ventilation is all natural ventilation, where we allow the air to move freely through the building, and through a series of automated vents, we can allow the natural air pressure to bring fresh air into the building as it's needed. So it becomes a 000 project. The cities, we also want to bring regeneration to the cities. Times Square pedestrianization, I think, is a good example. Completed in 2019. It took a long time to do it, but it's about putting the square back into Times Square. Times Square has always been the place where Manhattaners have been celebrating their good and bad days, but it's always been plagued by traffic. The traffic on Broadway cutting across 7th Avenue made it an unsafe place. We want to transform that into a new pedestrianized street. So 5 blocks of Broadway that have been pedestrianized. I'll move a little bit faster, but taking away the cars, taking away the pollution, taking away the traffic really means that you make it a much safer place, you reduce the crime, and you actually increase the tax revenues to the city. In Riyadh, we've been putting the public back into public transport, and we've just, proud to say, just opened this metro station in the heart of Riyadh. You know, they don't have any public transport in Riyadh, so this is the first public transport project in the city, and it gives the opportunity to get the cars off the street and the people onto the trains. It's an underground station. We're bringing light down, reflecting it down into this sunken garden 30 meters down where you meet the tracks and the platforms. And likewise, when you come out of the train, you can look up into the reflective bowl that shows out across the city. I'll move rather fast because the time is running a little out now, but this is from the outside where you look down to the inside. And landscapes can also be regenerative. This is our Under restaurant in Norway. It's a seafood restaurant. Our concept word for this was immersive, and the owner wanted to bring the restaurant down to the shore so we could have the seafood on the side of the sea. But the sea levels are rising, so we actually decided that perhaps the safest thing to do was to put the seafood restaurant under the water, so that you're always down in the waves. So this restaurant sits 5.5 meters down under the water. You sit down there and you can see the fish, and the fish can see you as you eat your seafood meal. What's really interesting is over the 5 or 6 years since this project has opened is how the marine environment has really taken back the whole project. So not just growing on the sides of the concrete, but also around it is becoming one with the seabed itself. And I'll finally end with a little project that I think is transforming, or has the opportunity to transform the city of Belfast. It's called Belfast Stories. It's a museum, but it's not a museum with objects that get dusty and old. It's a museum of stories. So they want to tell the ordinary and the rather extraordinary stories of that city. So we call it making the ordinary extraordinary and the extraordinary beautifully ordinary. It's under design now. It's built around this existing building, which is an old bank building. And it's about letting the people of Belfast tell their own stories, giving them a venue where you can just tell your stories, but also listen to other people's stories in changing times. The building is a mouth and an ear, a broadcaster and a recorder. And it's on this whole city block. It's this red building that connects to the old Art Deco bank building in the corner. It's under design now, so I can't show you too much, but look forward to showing you more of that later. I think I'm running out of time, so I'll end it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Robert, for such an insightful presentation. We all can see that this work that you just showcased is totally talking about the power of design to inspire, connect, and innovate. So thank you very, very much for this. All right, moving on, it's time to invite our second speaker, Ms. Nandini Somaya Sampat, Principal Architect at Somaya Sampat. Her approach to architecture is deeply rooted in heritage, sustainability, and cultural storytelling. She has been instrumental in preserving and revitalizing some of India's most iconic heritage buildings while also designing cutting-edge contemporary spaces. Her research-driven practice ensures that architecture not only serves functional needs, but also honors history and community. From museum designs to campus master plans, her work exemplifies the balance between tradition and transformation. A big welcome to Ms. Nandini Somaya Sampat. We're truly excited to hear your perspective on today's theme. Over to you.
Thank you, Pooja. I first would like to thank VC Live and Godrej Locks for this opportunity. It's an absolute privilege to hear Robert speak about Snohetta's incredible work and the impact that they have. So to just be together on this platform is an absolute joy. I will just share my screen. So today we had this challenging and wonderful topic of tradition to transformation. And I would like to take you through 3 different points through various projects that we have. Our studio has always believed that design has this incredible power to give a sense of identity, to strengthen purpose, and ultimately that converts into a transformative change in society. And our design philosophy is very deeply rooted in an Indian vernacular architecture and vocabulary, whether it is how we use water in our projects as a nucleus or a connector, or to generate microclimates depending on where we're building, or the incredible Indian light, which, if controlled, can really create brilliant sciography and also can create certain moods across the Indian landscape. Walls become an integral part depending on the scale. And what we've learned in building across India is that you have to build and learn to build across multiple scales to truly be a guardian of the built and the unbuilt in India. So whether it is just repairing a pavement or a smaller wall or doing 1 million square feet, I think it's a responsibility to be able to do it all. Geometry, of course, is the tools of an architect, and finally, materiality. In India, we are blessed with an incredible material palette across the country. And we believe in building for 2025, but certainly contextually. And how do we use those materials across the projects? So for us, of course, we're very deeply driven by research. That's really the heart of the studio and where it all begins, the context and the historical elements, the cultural elements. We then look at, of course, sustainability through methodologies of design, innovation, bringing in art, craft, and design solutions, and finally, collaboration. And this really goes with the client, but also to the users. And I think Robert talked about that, is that, are you asking the people who you're building for what you really want? And it becomes a very important question. So our work spans across geographies and typologies, and we are very blessed with being able to do the diversity of work. So the first idea to talk about this idea of tradition to transformation is, how do we effect this new change by architectural narratives that create and transform urban and social transformations? So I'm just going to walk through 4 ideas through different projects. This is IT campus of 1 million square feet that we built in Indore for Tata Consultancy. And I think the greatest challenge here was there was no context. We were given a blank piece of land with adjacent to a super corridor, and there was no real landscape. So as you're developing the heart of a project and a master plan, how do you become a storyteller? And so we looked at the area contextually around and the geographical landscape, and we took the strength of the river of the Narmada, which flows quite close to the land. And we used the flow of the Narmada river to create the master plan. So the Narmada starts in the Amarkanthak, in the Temple Hills, and it flows through the marble rocks, which are very dense, and then comes out through the Gulf of Khambat in the delta. And that's what we replicated in the master plan, that the central core of the campus, which is pedestrianized and purely for the people, will run this course as they walk through. And that became the heart of the master plan and the movement of the buildings. And we created this incredible ecosystem in the center, which fostered flora, fauna, movement, shading. And it really began the talking points for this campus and continues to be the story that all the stakeholders who are there tell everybody who comes. So here you can see those buildings that converge together as the marble rocks, and the landscape opens up into larger spaces that become the delta or replicate the delta. And it's wonderful to see how the sun rotates across the campus, because you're constantly navigating across different aspects of the buildings as the sun moves, and you're able to be shaded across different parts. And that becomes a very important part of movement in India, especially with the tremendous divergence in weather that we have. And I guess the most important, interesting layer of the master plan was this invitation to wildlife, where we had these incredible birds that were coming in, the new flora and fauna that were coming in, an entire new layer of an ecosystem that was developing in this digital campus and continues to develop today. So here was a marking of how storytelling and context and research can be imbibed into a master plan, creating social transformation. Another story is of a resort that we did in Rajasthan, in Kumbhalgarh. And here we were inspired by the incredible Kumbhalgarh fort and the hills that form the backdrop to this resort. And we were also inspired by the old artworks of miniature Rajasthani paintings. And how do we take that architecture and imbibe it into the resort, which is modular and repetitive, but also brings out a sense of familiarity and a sense of use of local materials, local knowledge, local know-how, and integrate it into the design. So I think there was a lot of layers that we brought in here, whether it was materially looking within the periphery of the site, bringing in local craftsmen to become involved in new architecture and contemporary architecture. And how do you allow them to become part of the storytelling and allow them to continue their craft within our profession? We brought in new patterning using old stones. We're very familiar with stones like Jaisalmer and basalt, etc. And how do you use those familiar stones but create new patterning? You can see all the jharokas done with GRC, so conventional materials, but using traditional detailing. And then, as you can see, a simple hotel room, but every piece on the wall was hand painted. So here again, we always request all of our clients to put 1% of the project cost towards local arts and crafts of the region, where we are able to bring in that context, bring in people to be able to support the project. Again, you can see those wonderful hills on the backdrop, and we staggered the architecture with the hills, minimizing cut and fill, but also being able to really blend in with your surroundings rather than just have a very large or tall footprint, and always giving this sense of place when you're at a destination. So I think as architects, one of the roles that we play is that none of our projects look alike, and perhaps that's responsibility of being able to convert a vision where each project has a distinct identity. A third story comes in the Goa Institute of Management. We were really there from the birth of this institute, from day zero as they were developing the planning for the institute, the different courses, the way they would build. And we've continued to be with the institute for the last decade. And as the institute grows, we continue to tell its story. And it's situated in Goa. It is dense, but we wanted to keep a footprint and open spaces as well. But I think the storytelling really comes from contemporary architecture that is layered with these colors of Goa, with the materials of Goa. So again, looking at regional, looking at local architecture. And we know the vibrancy of Goa colors, whether it's ochre or the terracotta or the strength of colors that we see. And we continue to use materials like laterite. You see the red laterite stone, again, locally sourced. Even as we were digging the site, we're able to reutilize that stone in the areas and taking in those detailings right from the outside to the inside of the spaces. Again, a contoured site, ensuring that we're able to use those contours. And what does a campus feel like as it morphs from day to night? Again, as we work with different clients, we are budget driven, we are conservative in the way we want to design, but we make buildings for longevity and buildings with a sense of identity, with no compromise on architecture and vocabulary. Again, using those vistas where we can, raising the buildings off the ground, allowing for all these buildings to be naturally ventilated. I would say at least 80% of them have no air conditioning. So again, how do you sustain for that, ensuring that design is really put in the forefront to maximize on, good techniques for sustainability? And here again, we're completely independent, the entire campus. In fact, the campus gives back to the grid because they're producing so much power. So again, being self-sufficient, being able to generate independently, and really integrating it in all aspects as you move forward. The fourth story in this storytelling of create and innovate is a school that we made in Vadodara. And over here, it was in the midst of carrot fields, and that was the context. And we had to do a K-12 school. And the inspiration really came from the client, who was driven by the philosophy of Gandhiji, who said that each child should become a stakeholder of the spaces. Each child should want to look after their space, clean their space, maintain their space. And how do you generate an environment which allows for that? So based on the philosophy of courtyard design, we built different scales of courtyards, right from smaller courtyards for the little children, and the courtyards scale up as you get older. And also this, of course, the use of brick, really inspired by the University of Great Nalanda up north, where great education was derived, but also bringing back local architectural and traditional methodologies of brick vaulting, which we use here. Again, we went out into the local area, found out some master brick vaulters, and they came in and worked with us to integrate it within the school design. Again, the only spaces in the school to be air-conditioned initially was the principal's room, and now the only other space is the computer room. So here again, you guided by the old philosophy of primary, secondary, and tertiary spaces. And this is so imbibed in our Indian architecture. So the primary space of the classroom, the second of those corridors, that become spaces where you see children walking, sitting, playing, and then the tertiary spaces of your courtyards. And again, as you watch the day transform and move through the buildings, it's amazing to see how children and teachers use the building in different areas as the day goes on. And of course, the sciography of light that continues to change with scale through the different buildings and sizes. The second idea I want to touch upon is the idea to reimagine and renew. And how do we use tradition and transform it into new and active buildings that we can really reutilize? So celebrating and honoring this legacy of conservation, preservation, and adaptive reuse. And one idea is, of course, pure heritage conservation work. This is a grade 1 building where you have to do a very, I would say, devoted conservation process, the Rajabai Tower. This was an incredible project. Just to make the drawings was such a gift, because the detailing of the project and the work and the variety of stonework and the in-depth detailing was incredible to carry out. We had a working clock that we kept working right through the project, and we actually created a workshop at 100 feet, because we couldn't just haul up all the material. The workmen actually had to sit at 100 feet to do the repairs of all the smaller details at that height. So again, as you're doing the restoration of this work, how are you respectful of what has gone before? We could not stop the clock because the clock is heard by the entire city. So every 1 hour, we had to lower ourselves down to a lower floor and shut our ears. And then as you move upwards, how do you continue that sense of restoration and purity for the city and the space? Again, ensuring that we can bring modern utilities within the building. So again, electrical points, we didn't want to chafe through walls or have any exterior exposures. So we actually identified that there were old gas pipes that were running through the building originally. And we actually routed all the electrical lines through those original gas pipes for the lighting design. So here again, the conservation process becomes this incredible layering and understanding of what has gone before. Another restoration of an incredibly important building, but how do we adapt it for today, was the Vikram Sarabhai Library at IIM Ahmedabad. This is a Louis Kahn building built on the campus and one of the first restorations to be done. And I think the important message here was, how do we really give a state-of-the-art library to one of the leading world institutions of business while staying committed to restoring this building to the glory that it is? And here again, you can see post-restoration, whether it was looking into the materiality, working within the existing lights that were originally designed for the spaces, but also adding this layer of additional contemporary lighting required, whether it was using wayfinding through the library itself, but also using methodologies both for physical books as well as digital learning that we have today. And just experiencing the beauty and delight of 20th century buildings here, and how we have to restore them with incredible care to ensure a sense of longevity for them. And that this becomes a critical mass for important institutions to continue to preserve for the future, so that they can talk about the story that's gone before, but really make it relevant for the future as well. The third little story is an old bank building that is on a main street in Mumbai that one of the schools, a cathedral schools, bought and wanted us to convert into a school. And what does it mean to convert a building with a completely different usage into a school? And this is possible too. And what we want to say is that we want clients to have the confidence to be able to take these buildings and understand that they can be repurposed for their needs and purposes, whatever they may be. And us as architects are committed to being able to do those aspects. This building was fantastic because every single window had a different detailing. So we had over 200 different details on these windows. We also had to completely replan the building internally, because as a bank, it was segregated into these little organic pockets. And as a school, you had to open it up into intermediary spaces. You also had this incredible wrought iron cage lift that we resurrected, over 100 years old, and then integrated some of the contemporary but historic flooring into the detailing. And of course, the appreciation of the students being able to do very contemporary work in an old building that has such history and storytelling becomes an incredible moment. It's amazing to sit in a classroom. You do not need to put on any lights till probably the evening hours because of the incredible natural light that comes in. So again, the ability and the natural design of these older buildings to be able to sustainably work extremely well for a variety of uses is still there. And of course, resorting and refining and upgrading all the old stained glass and ensuring that historical aspect continues. The last little jewel in historic preservation is a small little building, really started for the support of the girl child and of women. It's called the Seva Sadan Malabari Hall. And over here, young girls and women are taken in order to support them, give them life skills, and make them go out and be able to really become independent in the world. And we took on this little project to upgrade this little building. And it had such significance because in this neighborhood, this was one of the few public buildings that people could rent out the hall and have a personal function or a marriage function. There was no other facility around available. And this also helped in the income generation of the society. So here again, we completely upgraded the hall itself, the interiors, the quality of lights. And this is the hall which is still being used. It actually won a UNESCO Pacific Award. And one of the things that was told was that it was rejuvenating the neighborhood to be able to utilize a public space such as this, which still supports the girl child today. And several programs are taking place. It's very, very successful as a community space, but also as a space which then supports Seva Sadan, which is most important. Finally, looking at the idea of architecture through built environments, through immersive environments, through art and craft, which really excites us. So how do we engage? How do we inspire using tradition and really transforming it again? And here in this little hotel that we did, we decided to use the Indian script. So we worked with an artist very closely, and we worked across 4 different scripts spanning the north, south, east, and west of India. And we integrated all the ideas of art and craft into the hotel room details, whether it was on the detailing of the runners, the backboards, the signage, the graphics. And each one had a little QR code that talked about the history and the significance of these scripts. And each room is different. So this is primarily for the business traveler. So you could come here and stay in different rooms and have a different experience each and every time. So here again, even a project which is a business hotel, how do you make it memorable? How do you make it contextual? And how do you make it dynamic so that storytelling continues through graphic art and culture through the spaces? And it's incredible to see the building at night, because this facade, we had managed to design it so that every room color kind of appears differently. So you have the reds and the greens and the yellows, and it transforms the evening. The second experience design we did was very exciting, which was the first exhibition called India and the World, which was a collaboration between the British Museum, CSMVS in Mumbai, and the National Museum, Delhi. And we were the exhibition designers appointed for this museum, for this exhibition design. And what was so exciting was this was 9 categories of storytelling that had to be done chronologically through time, that parallelly told the story of India, parallelly with what was happening in the world. So the concept that we developed was that we'll transport you back in time down a wormhole where we take you through all the chaos of the world down into this exhibition, and your senses are re-enlightened, and you start chronologically through time, going all the way through the ages, experiencing all the different sections until we spit you back out into the world. So here again, I think one of the challenges that we experienced was we wanted to use color. And this was not something that was very much used or done before this exhibition, because there was great apprehension in being able to use color with objects. And the one thing that we wanted to convince the directors were that in India, your audience is incredibly diverse. You get everybody from the villager who is illiterate and does not get a sense of space unless there's something visual or something colored. And there is the academician, or the very high level of understanding. So exhibitions have to be layered for all those sections of society. And it was agreed and accepted, and it was very exciting because we started with the shared world, which was the hand axes and the worlds in caves, where we began with this very gritty color. And we mapped our way through the civilizations, and you can see the snaking case, which curves, which represents the winding river civilizations. And on the right, we were able to put the graphics of the maps of cities. So here again, storytelling through more than just small objects, that immersively people can feel they're going through spaces. And you come into the area of the great empires, where we use the rich and deep red color, and you have those gateway objects of grand pillars, juxtaposed with Ashokan edicts. So they were talking about central and great empires coming through. And then you're transported into the world of state and faith, where faith comes in and starts dominating the worlds. And you can see the wooden Jesus juxtaposed with the stone Ganesh. Now, you would think the Ganesh was from India and the Jesus was from the world, but the Jesus is actually from Goa and the Ganesh from Indonesia. So you're talking about these wonderful stories that play off against each other and creating spaces that are immersive. So we again created this circular a kind of experience to understand and go through all the gods. And then we come through the time of freedom and fighting and violence, and we kept it very pure and white. And you can see all those juxtapositions. You can see Gandhiji's bust there at the back, and we created this jali or screen which represented this idea of a jail, and you could see through it. And finally, you're thrown back into the world through the dark end. And the last object, which was fantastic, it was as you can see, a Shiva who was encased in concrete and money, which has now become the obsession of the times we live in. And so we built a mirror around it so you could see the object infinitely. And that became the end message, that today we need to be conscious of that. We end with the little god Rahu on the side, who you can see is the consumer of time, and he spits you back out into the real world after you've experienced this. A third experience design which we did was for a big corporate. We restored an old Art Deco building and completely upgraded the interiors for BPCL. But what was very important for us here was that every piece of artwork and lighting that you saw was done by Indian artists, over 100 of them spread all over India. And we worked with them through COVID, and it really, they survived through COVID because of this project. So here again, what kind of impact can we have, and what is the art and craft we can support? This is completely done by reused wood chips. We had completely e-waste art that was being reproduced. So here again, we developed several concepts and worked with local artists and artists all around India, actually, to come up with these artworks, specially curated for the client. Each artwork you see, again, the idea of BPCL working with oil rigs and working across geographies. We created art pieces based on that. And then where does the digital come in? We also have to be noted that digital world is the world today. And we created one of the longest digital screens. It's 42 feet running screen in this heritage building, which live streams all the digital data of BPCL from all over the world. So here again, combining this idea of the digital experience with the art experience becomes very exciting. And then immersing it further, the two coming together in experience centers, where we design the objects and the storytelling of a company through phygital books, through immersive screens, and through the narratives of their verticals of how they continue to tell their story. And finally, the most recent experience design, where we have done the first Mumbai gallery, a gallery dedicated to the city of Mumbai. And the title of the first exhibition is The People of Mumbai. And we were responsible for the curation and design of this gallery. So how do you begin to go about telling the story of 21 million people? And how do you choose to tell it? And what we did was, we decided to create a collective of people that represented three different aspects of the city. One is Mumbai as a city of opportunity, one as the city of migrants, and one as a city of cosmopolitanism. And on the left is all our collaborators who came together to tell this storytelling. And we had two sections. One is the permanent section of the gallery, which was to be calm, like the sea and the water's edge of Mumbai. And the inside was this incredibly overly sensorial experience, which we experience when we are roaming the streets of Mumbai. And that's what we wanted to diverge in. So here again is that calm sensation, that introduction of Mumbai. We worked with an incredible muralist ST Plus Art. They do murals all around India, and we collaborated with them to bring in the ideas of the world of Mumbai. And then, of course, all your digital contents on the exterior. But the first object that you see from the outside was a work by an artist called Valai Shinde. And he has created these people hanging from the railway station inside a train. It's called Virar Local. And you can see how densely us Mumbaikars are packed when we travel through that gateway and through that railway. But it's really representing this idea of Maya Nagri, that Mumbai is a city of dreams, that you come here with all these ambitions, and she does give back to you. And in spite of the chaos and all the noise and the traffic and the standard of living, she is the world that we really are immersed in. So you start with this, and each of these objects are made with stainless steel discs that reflect the user and the viewer. So that is a reflection of the 21 million people. And then we broke the rules again. We decided to go neon. So here again, you can see the 3 neon boxes, the box of opportunity, the box of migrants, and the box of cosmopolitanism. And it wanted to be a vibrant story. We had incredible artists. You can see Swabu Kohli's work there, which talks about the flora and fauna that we have in the mangroves of Bombay. And there are these incredibly intricate artworks with flamingos that actually become activated as you wind them through. You here have in the migrants column the incredible photographs of David D'Souza, which talks about the itinerants of Bombay, the nomads, the everyday workers, the common man. And you can see the Bairagis here. These are our entertainers on our Bombay streets. They take whips to hit themselves, and that's how they earn their money, and they've done it for generations. So here again, the storytelling continues of our city, whether it is about the food that we have on our beaches on the left, our Sev Puri and Bhel Puri, to all the immersive experiences of the old red double-decker buses and the immersive ideas of our coastal edges and our beaches. And finally, what was it like as Mumbai to be an economic generator? I mean, it really began with the textile mills. So we have the storytelling of the mills on the left and how Mumbai grew into a mill city and really the production hub. And on the right, how did they live in the chawls of Bombay? And these chawls really became an architectural importance and are even today very much so. And finally, we end with AI. You can't take it away from anybody. So we have an amazing artist called Varun Gupta, and he's interpreted Bombay as Cyborg Bay. So what was Bombay in 1997, but if it had cyborgs in it? So here again, you can see the past coming into the future, tradition merging with technology. And that really is the storytelling. So with the great change sweeping India, our mission has never been clearer: to shape a future through architecture that fosters innovation, creates opportunities, and upholds human values. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Robert and Nandini, for those truly inspiring presentations. It's incredible to see how both of you are redefining architecture through such distinct yet complementary lenses. So thank you very, very much for doing this for us. All right, now let's move forward and let's start the discussion. Let's dive deeper into the topic, which is architecture, tradition to transformation. So if I can request Nandini, if you can start and talk about the topic, which is architecture, tradition to transformation.
So,
Anything you want to share? Yeah.
I think for us, rooted in India, this is such an important aspect of design and architecture. And yet we see it percolating so beautifully in Robert's work and Snohetta's work as well. I think tradition gives us the basic foundations and the tools. But today we have to be more conscious about how we're utilizing it. And it's also about oral history. It's about local know-how. It's about materiality. And as Robert says, it's about people. So for us as architects to be able to link up all those worlds and bring them together, and yet to be able to build for today and for the scale and life of people, that traditional aspect of understanding and know-how becomes so important. So whether it percolates through our work, through research or design or art, or I think the wonderful fan that created, an entire building, I think that becomes the basis of where we are all looking to try and tread very lightly across our worlds.
Absolutely well said. Thank you so much for that. All right, Robert, if you wish to share something about the topic.
Okay, so really, thank you, Nandini, for showing us the work. Really great to see. I think my thoughts really are about the differences between us working in the West or globally, if you like, and India. And I think that there's a real difference if a perception of time, maybe that's what it is, and there's a continuum that seems to be in your work, in the culture of India that we lack. We are far too quick to put up boundaries between what's traditional, what's vernacular, and what's new and what's contemporary. And the two don't really mix so very well. But I see in your work and I see in India that you don't have the same barriers between vernacular and contemporary. And I think this opens for a whole new view of what is a direction for architecture that really embraces both the old and the new in one continuation. So that's really, really good for me to see. Thank you very much. One question I would have to you is how easy is it to find the craftsmen and the craftswomen who can carry on these traditions? Because we often have problems there. Just for the stone carving of the walls of Alexandria, we had to re-educate stone carvers in their old methods of carving. They'd all been eradicated. It was just saws and dynamite and modern techniques. So we had to re-educate, and that was really a big part of the project, this re-education. But maybe you don't need to do that in India. Maybe these people still are there, that those traditions are still living.
Yeah, Robert, I think two things which you said. I think one I'll answer, in India, or should I say in the West, time is considered to be linear. That means you have a start point and it goes straight on for infinity. But in India, time is cyclical. And so it continues forever on the cycle. So as you talk about how our connections seem to be cyclical, it's definitely rooted in that idea of time being cyclical. As far as arts and crafts, I think we're very blessed as a country. Everywhere you go, we literally fall upon more arts and crafts and traditional know-how. I think where there is a concern is, one is how to ensure the transfer of that know-how, because a lot of it is oral or physical. So to ensure that we can ensure master craftsmen that we do come in touch with are able to either share their art or continue it through a skill-based common service. So certainly we do have access to it. You do have to look for it, but it is still available. I think the other aspect is how do you integrate them into our contemporary world? And that's the fun part. And I think architecture is that collaboration. As we always say, it's never a solo sport. So when they talk about star architects, we get confused. But it's such a team sport. And I think the greatest projects are these wonderful collaborations. So we're very fortunate that we're able to still be in touch with and find these artists and craftsmen across India. But it is getting harder and it is getting more precious to keep and preserve.
Absolutely well said. So thank you so much. I think because of the paucity of time, we'll have to quickly jump onto the Q&A. Our audience members are very keenly waiting to get the answers from both of you. So we will start with Robert. It has been, the question is by Ms. Vasudevan TJ. And she asks, outline the challenges you faced to design and executing the project underwater.
Yeah, I mean, it's rather unusual, of course, to build something underwater. We've never done it before. It sort of changes everything. Do you even have a site? Does anyone actually own the site? Sort of questions pop up. The building wasn't built on the site. The building was built as a ship. It was built in a shipyard, put on a barge with a crane and moved to the site and then sort of dropped. So in a way, we weren't designing a building, we were designing a boat. And which regulations do you actually use? Is it a building? Is it a boat? But yeah, it was all done offsite. It was prefabricated and floated to the side. So really quite an unusual way of constructing.
Absolutely, yes. All right, one more question for Nandini. It says, do you think traditional materials and construction techniques still hold relevance in contemporary architecture?
Always, always. I mean, the past is always an inspiration. It's a learning tool. And everybody thinks they're reinventing the wheel. They're certainly not. We're just finding different ways to use it. So we are so lucky. We have this incredible source of almost infinite knowledge where we can take and learn and develop. And I think we've seen it. We have so much of it in our country, and of course, across the world, there seems to be incredible amounts. So always becomes the basic foundation or the source of where you go to begin.
All right. So there's another question. It says, either of you can answer. It says, what's the one design philosophy or principle that has remained constant in your journey as architects?
Robert?
Okay, so I start. I think I'm just gonna say one word, and that's generosity. I think it should be a generous process. The buildings should be generous. They should be generous to the society that they're a part of, but also our processes must be generous too. They must allow other people to take part in those processes. So if there's one word, I think it's be generous.
Lovely. Nandini.
It's a hard one, but I always come back to this word of appropriate architecture. And for us, that means each case is so different and each case is so subjective. And I think we've got to, kind of analyze all aspects of it to get the best solution and then make appropriate architecture. It's not about doing something stylistic or doing something to make a statement or doing something to tick off a box, but it should be appropriate for what it's being designed for.
Absolutely well said. It says, one more question. It says, we have huge urbanization influx. How do we still hold on to traditional architectural approach against the tsunami of urban built spaces demand? It has been asked by this gentleman called Girish. Any one of you?
So I think I'll kick this off just because we have, the biggest urban migration happening in India. We will have 40% of our population in our cities by 2030. Our cities are just on 3% of our land and will eventually hold 40% of our population. And what's even more amazing is these are the cities that generate 60% of our GDP. So here, if you look at all these statistics, they're incredibly, it's an incredibly important time. And we see this shift in our country. What we need to do is protect our heritage of what we have within our cities. Here again comes back to conservation, preservation, adaptive reuse. Old buildings have embodied energy. And if you can conserve and preserve and reuse that, that is of great value. The second, which we see, Robert so much talking about, is fighting for pedestrianized spaces. We need to learn to make the car secondary, and we need to keep people first in our urban spaces. And thirdly is egalitarianism. We do not want to build walls. Our greatest strength as Indians is that we all live together, side by side, shoulder to shoulder. Gated communities, building walls, segregation will never be the way. And as we come into this urban shift, we see a larger economic divide. And it's all the more important today to ensure we build for all. It is going to be the most important thing as we move ahead as a country.
All right, we'll take one last question, and that's for Robert. It says, Robert, sir, wonderful presentation. My question is, in case of increased urbanization, how do you ensure that cultural and environmental responsibility remain at the heart of design?
Well, I think, Nandini, I think you answered some of those questions already, but I suppose we always have to put people first, whether it's urban work we're doing or not urban work. If we concentrate on people, then that's going to be our best bet. Looking after neighborhoods, looking out for communities, giving people space to develop those communities that we need in our cities. It's interesting to hear about the urbanization in India, and obviously it's a huge process. And yes, I've been in some of those cities, and it is quite bewildering, mind-boggling. I also come from parts of the world here in the West where we're building down our cities in a way, and some of the urban pressures are actually reducing. And how do you actually look after neighborhoods and communities in cities that are maybe getting less urban? It's sort of turning things on its head and probably doesn't make much sense in Indian connection, but it is something that we certainly experience here. And the project I talked about last in Belfast, well, that's a city where 100 years ago, there was probably many more people living in that city than live there now. And how do we ensure that we tell their stories and continue to develop those communities? But I think it's all part of the same problem. It's about looking after people. It's about looking after community.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you once again to all for this incredible insights and for taking the time to answer these questions. Before we wrap up, I would also like to hear your closing thoughts on the future of architecture. We can start with Robert.
Architecture is only getting more and more important. I think that as a discipline, as long as we take our starting point in the social regeneration that we talked about, then architecture is hugely important. And I hope there's going to be a new generation of architects coming who really take that as their starting point, social regeneration.
Thank you so much for that thought. Nandini?
For me, architecture is the master of the arts. You can encompass everything that you are interested or your life interacts with you falls within architecture. So as architects, we are guardians of the built and unbuilt, and that responsibility has to run deeply through. And I think in India, we have to give more respect to the profession. We need to give more time and devotion to nation building, city building, people building, placemaking. But it's a wonderful profession, and we're very blessed to be a part of it.
Thank you so much. All right, what an extraordinary session. A huge thank you to Robert Greenwood and Nandini Somaya Sampat for sharing their expertise and challenging us to rethink the role of architecture in shaping the future. A big thank you to our lovely audience for joining us, engaging with our speakers, and making this episode truly special. Stay connected with us for updates on episode 7 of We See Live. Until then, keep pushing the boundaries of design and innovation. Thank you very much. Please take care.
Welcome to the Godrej Value Co-Creators Club, where innovation meets collaboration. GVCC is a unique platform for architects and interior designers to merge their creative visions with our innovative product offerings. We aim to cultivate a network of thought leaders, driving innovation and excellence in the industry. Celebrate your achievements with our GV's Awards, recognizing innovative projects across various verticals. Join our community through exhibition visits and masterclasses to stay updated on the latest trends and technologies. Enjoy exclusive access to new products, special discounts, and tours of our Mumbai and Goa plants. Join the Godrej Value Co-Creators Club today. Be part of a community that values innovation, collaboration, and sustainability.
Hey Google, unlock the front door.
What's your voice code for front door?
7777.
Unlocking. Hang on. The front door is unlocked.
Godrej locks.